All right. All right, let's begin. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our online webinar, Introduction to Co-Design. My name is Morgan. Please ignore the name underneath my screen. I'm using somebody else's account today. I am the webinar series manager, as well as a PhD candidate and a research assistant at the Centre Social Marketing at Griffith. Now, before we begin today, could I please ask that everybody mute their microphones if they haven't already, just to reduce any background noise during the session today. Also, if you haven't already, could you please turn off your video feed? And this is just to ensure smooth video quality throughout the session. If you have any questions during today's webinar, please feel free to use the chat box, and the chat box will be checked regularly throughout the session. We're also going to be using a few polls today that we'd love you to interact with. We will be sharing the results of the polls with everybody, but they are completely anonymous, so we won't be able to see who has responded to what. As you can see in the top corner there, today's webinar is being recorded. So later on today, everybody will receive an email from me with a link to the video recording, as well as the PowerPoint slides. Okay, so before I waste any more of your time, it's my pleasure to present Timo and J1, who are going to be your presenters for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan, for this lovely introduction, and great to see so many people joining us on this Friday lunchtime session. That is really fantastic. My name is Dr. Timo Dietrich, and I'm the Engagement Director at Social Marketing at Griffith, and co-design has been personally a big part of my journey over the last decades, and I'm super excited to share our way of doing co-design in our center with you today, together with soon-to-be Dr. Jae-won Kim, who also is kind enough, as she's moving house, to make some time here. So be keen to see where you're actually running this session, and our background here is perhaps hiding, the real background that Jae-won has to deal with as she's moving houses. Yeah, Jae-won has been doing a lot of work in the co-design space herself over the recent years. And yeah, we're just excited to sort of kick this session off and start speaking to you about co-design. So just for a bit of background, our center, for those that don't know us, we are the world's largest university-based research center that's out there, focused on social marketing and how we can achieve behavior change, essentially underpinned by proprietary co-create, build, and engage framework that we use for all our behavior change projects. And our team is around 40 people, and we are a young and dynamic team. And I sort of put it down here for you. It's a bit of an oxymoron, but a thought starter. We are the responsible, rebellious social marketers with a mission to serve the people and the planet across many environmental, social, and health-related issues that we tackle with our partner organizations that we team up with to make this change happen. I mentioned the CBE process just a second ago, and really CBE, I wanted to highlight this for everyone here because co-design really fits as a specific method in that first step of the CBE process, in that co-creation phase. And it's the method we use to make sure that we engage with relevant stakeholder groups in the process of really trying to do this deep learning to understand how we can create and identify unique insights that help us then to build programs that truly manage to move the needle, that achieve the change that we want to seek to achieve. So that's where the co-design sort of element will fall in that process. And I guess, Jae-won, this was our time now to have a bit of a question, and we just wanted to get a sense of your experience when it comes to co-creation, participatory design, co-design, and we just wanted you to pick here and answer this poll really quickly for us to highlight which of these methodologies, processes you have encountered, perhaps worked with, and just sort of answer this question for us. I'll just watch the results sort of bubble in. Very interactive, always fun to see this come through. So participatory design is the winner currently. Actually followed still by co-design with 44%. Human-centered design coming in third. Design thinking chasing human-centered design, and co-creation. Still a few answers coming through.
And 0 for living lab. Interesting.
Yeah, living lab.
Still waiting for another 25% of the participants to vote it for us, but I can end the poll here. I think
that's good. That gives us a good overview, and obviously we want to stick to our timings and our schedule today. So yeah, participatory design is the winner, followed by co-design. Glad to see a lot of people are aware of co-design, but I think Jay1 and I really wanted to just kind of see what concepts and terms you might be using in the context of this sort of participatory design terminology. And the interesting bit here really is that these things all have similar elements to them, but when we talk about co-creation, for us it's really an umbrella term where there's specific methods you can utilize in order to achieve that. And co-design, for example, would be a specific instance, a specific way of co-creating with your users. Design thinking, equally so. There's differences between design thinking and co-design, and so are there very unique differences when it comes to the living lab approach, which is a methodology actually out of Scandinavia in Northern Europe. So I think just conceptually it's important to understand that before we jump into our way of presenting co-design to you, so that you understand where it fits. J1, if you can remove the poll here from our screen, then I'm happy to move forward.
Yep, I did.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, and we also had a chat from Lee and Michael and Joshie saying that there is none of the above option for individuals just starting with it. But yeah, I'm pretty sure, after today's workshop, you'll be able to tick the co-design. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. We forgot that answer. Excellent. Well, so, we often think that obviously co-design is important because we want to understand how we can serve the people, we want to serve and seek to serve a lot better. And yet it's mesmerizing that even in the commercial world, we end up with a lot of service sort of design and product design solutions where you wonder retrospectively, how were they ever approved? Did no one talk to anyone in the process? And how top down must that have been? For those of you that are working in the sort of behavior change space, in the public health space, in the environmental change space, and you think your sector is struggling to build cool programs, cool services, or engaging service solutions, well, you're not alone. Even the big players of the world, the big brands of the world, occasionally actually really stuff up. I think it's fascinating to witness Colgate back in the day trying to launch a beef lasagna. Or we can see Twitter's invention, Peak, which was essentially launched at the time when the smartphone came out, about 12 years ago. And at that time, essentially, they just produced a phone-type device that was allowed you to look at your Twitter feeds. I mean, whoever thought that you would carry, just a singular device for your Twitter feed around with you, and who thought that that would be a good idea? We've asked ourselves this question many times, but it did truly happen. So there's many examples of service failures, and I guess our aim when we want to co-design with the people we seek to serve is to really delight these people in the end. We want to give them something that is truly relevant to them, and is something that they want to engage with. So just as another little thought starter here, we wanted to ask you, if you were working in a hotel and you're the manager of the hotel and you just found a teddy bear in a hotel room, or a staff member did, and that family had already checked out because you checked in the reservation system, and they left for the airport, and they're already on their way back home. What would you do? How would you approach this? So we encourage you just quickly over the next 30 seconds, showcase a few of your answers that are coming up to your mind, how you would manage this, and then we'll reveal the story behind it.
So we got a Lucy saying ring them, Michael saying offer to post it them, send it to their address, ring and ask a question, contact them, then post it to them. Yeah, I think we got and we're also getting Uber it to the airport.
That's a good one. Uber it to the airport.
Yep. Yep. Or ask the family what they would like us to do about it.
Yes, very appropriate in the world of co-design, right? Design the answer with the family together.
Yep. So it's either ring them, send them. Yeah, I think those two are the most dominant solutions we have it here. Take a photo if they're in a hotel having a nice time, then send it to a box with hotel merch.
Yes, good. The marketers are coming out. Well, let's move forward here. I for those that don't know the story, it's been out there for some time, but it's the legendary story of the Ritz-Carlton and how they actually dealt with this particular incident. And when the family arrived back at home, obviously they realized fairly soon with the first tantrum of the child that Joshie was gone, and they wanted to make sure that Joshie was still alive and well. And when they chatted to the hotel, they could assure that. But before they sent Joshie back, they worked on a good plan, and they made sure that Joshie had a good adventure, and that the parents could actually say to their kid, look, Joshie is going to come home, but he actually liked the Ritz-Carlton so much, he's going to stay a little bit longer. And so they just kind of took Joshie on this little mini holiday, and then they put this into the package that they sent back to the family. And rest assured, this family definitely became lifetime advocates and brand ambassadors for the Ritz-Carlton in the way that they handled it. And it didn't go, it wasn't so much of a cost burden for them in order to do something very small that had so much of a strong effect. And we love this example when we talk about delighting customers, because this was truly a delightful way of doing and achieving that. So when you hear these success stories and our motivations for delighting the people that we want to serve, and we see these failures of the big companies, whether it's Google or Twitter or Colgate, then we wonder sometimes why that still happens. And the reason is because, co-design and co-creation is often perceived as a big cost to organizations, because it costs money and time and energy to talk to your end users or to talk to wider stakeholder groups. And often when it's sort of a siloed operation and it's just, let's say, a research team or a design team that is actually not involved in promoting and selling the end product, then they also struggle to actually advocate for the time and energy and money that should be spent on this very important phase of co-creation. So I think as a result of that, we've spent a lot of time really trying to articulate the value as well that co-design can bring to your organization as you're trying to sometimes win and pitch it to, I guess, senior members in your team, if that is not you directly making these budgetary decisions, and that is often the case with the clients that we are working with. So in that case, you really have to make a good business case, because even in the commercial sort of operating world, often here, that's the first sort of budget item that goes and that somebody doesn't really want to fund and support. When we do co-design very well, we can achieve magic. We can create environments where something was in the past, a fear sort of instilling element. I, as a young child, had to go into one of these fMRI scanning machines because of a tennis injury, and it was in Germany, and Germany is cold and brutal, and the doctors enjoyed to see the pain on the children. No, I'm joking, that's obviously not the case, but it was exactly what you see here on the left. What's displayed here on the right didn't exist back then. And I think, sort of working with the doctors, with the nurses, with the people that work in these environments and see these children come in, and then co-creating a solution that actually suddenly makes this whole experience a fun adventure. Again, fairly simple, but a beautiful outcome that we see in the end. no matter how much we will advocate for co-design and co-creation to happen, I think, there will always be iconic design solutions that are out there that continue to please us every time we use them. Think of the Swiss Army knife, think of the Google homepage. They're simple, they haven't changed a whole lot because they've just been developed to the exact point of, we can say it, perfection and excellence to give that value to the users. But for, better or worse, we will also always we will be surrounded by bad design solutions. Think of your USB plug that you can never get right and you never know how to put it in, or a rushed airport experience, which might be not the case at this point in time anymore. But little things like that. And we obviously want to try to avoid any type of bad design. We want to go for more iconic design. And working with stakeholder groups is important because there's always a fundamental difference how a user will experience something, how the designer wants to build the solution. And in between, there's researchers and the people that decide over the budgets and other important stakeholders that we all need to kind of bring around the table and co-create with. And that's what we do. And that's what we have really perfectionized over the recent years, and therefore built the 7-step co-design process over the last decade to really highlight how this is done, how this is achieved. And if you've asked yourself when is Timo finally going to stop presenting and when is he going to hand over to J1, well, the point is really, really near because J1 is actually going to take you in more detail through the 7-step co-design process. But it is something that we have done in dozens of different types of contexts with different audience groups, from the hard to reach, from the easier to the easier to reach people across environmental, social, and health related complex issues, where people were saying, how do we ever find these people? How can they ever give us any insights? And why do we need to speak to them to making this a success? And we have also published this process in a variety of different journals with the team. And here's just a selected a list of examples. And for those that are keen to read a bit more dense academic writing, please just email us and we're more than happy to share these with you. So gives me great pleasure to introduce J1 now and hand over to her to take you through the details of the 7-step co-design process and how we live and breathe co-design in the center.
Thank you, Timo. Oh, that was an excellent introduction to co-creation, which is a key concept of co-design step. Before I move into each step and let you know what you exactly need to do and what is expected to co-create a value that the community really wants to just eat up straight after you releasing the behavior change program, let me give you a big picture first. I'm sort of like that. I need a big picture to get to the details, so I'll picture it to you. So the 6-step co-design process was first introduced by Timo, Sharon, and Jacob in 2016. From there, it has been applied to numerous projects and improved to best guide the implementation of consumer orientation in a program development. But the most recent co-design process, we got the 7th step at the moment, it still centers the importance of working with the people in the loop of generating new product or services, but it also emphasizes on transforming the co-created ideas for real change. As Timo mentioned briefly, before, the co-design process is not only for the end user, but it is also for the wider consumers, including policymakers, stakeholders, and customers. So as you may have noticed, the title of steps speaks clearly about what you must need to do to co-create a program concept for change and movement. Starting with the resourcing appropriate information to plan better for upcoming workshop, the recruiting right people, and the first half of the step allows you to be 100% prepared for the co-creation workshop that you will deliver with the people you want to change ultimately. The beauty of co-design is in the middle and the later steps, in my experience, is that to nudge and empower your people to be at their best creativity. We sensitize them with appropriate materials. We facilitate them to create solutions together with you. All gathered ideas are then reviewed through reflection step and utilized to build program for change. So the co-design is not only about gathering audience insight, but it is also about creating value together with your people from very beginning of the change. Next slide, please, Timo. So from now on, I'll get into each step. So the first step is resourcing. For us to sensitize and facilitate our people to generate something that is important to them and be fully open to us in sharing their opinions, we need to provide appropriate information that can make your people to drawn into the right context and knowledge that you're trying to solve the problem. We get information through resourcing step of co-design, and most of the time we've conducted a systematic literature review. It was to identify wrongdoings and successes that previous programs have achieved. One of the example paper is screenshotted there, so you can actually go there and read it, how we do a resourcing step as a preparation to the co-design workshop. Through this kind of rigorous review, we get to understand who we need to talk to and who has changed because of what strategy and value that previous programs did deliver. So once all lessons are learned, we then move to planning. Next slide, please, Timo. So based on the previous findings, we plan when and where to set workshops. Sorry, Michael. Can everyone hear me clearly? I just got a chat box saying that there's a lose of sound.
I can hear you well here.
Okay. Just trying to be also engaging. And yep. Let me know if you feel me to slow down a bit more. All good? Okay, cool. So based on the previous finding, we plan when and where to set the workshop, with whom, using what materials. Most of the time, the planning is actually tied up with the recruitment stage. So the next slide, please, Timo. Which is a third step of co-design. In this step, we focused on getting on the right people on board, because you can use numerous strategies to reach people, the appropriate people, maybe by leveraging the partnership and through online and offline. We also try to use every single resources that we have in our hand to recruit the right people. We normally have a screening question in this stage for the registration to the workshop, so that we can actually recruit and screen the right people who are your target audience to just join the workshop. So the step 2 and 3 kind of, there's a loop around there. So you might actually think about planning the recruitment strategy using various partnerships that you have with your stakeholders. Then you will also go back to the planning stage once again to make sure that you book the right venue, you print the right stuff, to be prepared for the workshop. And then you might go back to the recruitment stage to go through all this registration that came through your online or offline interest. And then you're going to screen people, and then you can only send the confirmation email to the people that you think that could best give us their opinion at the workshop.
AJ1, there's just a question coming through. If you could give an example of a screening process a bit more.
So I'm a food lover and a waste hater. And that was my PhD. So the food waste was my context. I've used co-design to understand what are the barriers and the wrongdoings of the previous food waste prevention programs. So when I utilize co-design for my PhD study to develop a food waste reduction campaign for a household within Australia, what I went through was that I gathered all the information through the resourcing step of all those factors that will have an influence on food waste behavior. For example, age, whether you have access to garden, whether you own the house or not, because that could also change your lifestyle to be more sustainable or not. So using those 3 different key factors, I put all of these questions into the registration form, which I created through the Google form, cheapest one that I could afford with my limited budget for my PhD study. And then I create a link to that Google form, and then I put it up on Facebook so people can register. I got over 200 people registered for co-design session, co-design workshop. But I've only handpicked 70 out of them, those who are younger, found to be younger, and as well as have no access to the garden, and then they do rent, so they don't own a house. So that was my target audience, and I got this through resourcing step, and I put that in the questions for the registration questions, and then I use that as a tool to pick the right people and send confirmation email to them so they can actually come to our co-design session. Was that clear enough, Tanya? Good, brilliant.
Yeah, I think yes, great, she says. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. You can also read about this process through our recent paper that's published in Journal of Cleaner Production. I'm happy to share the link to that. So.
Yeah. There's some more follow-up questions that are coming through, but let's maybe have J1 sort of step us through the steps, and we'll park some of those questions towards the end once more. Samira, if you could hold on to your question, and let's do them in the Q&A, which we have set up for after the presentation part of J1.
Thank you, Tima. Yes, we'll hold on to that question. So we got Q&A session at the end. So to the next slide, please. So step 4. This is the start of the workshop. So you've gathered everyone in person. Nowadays, we can only do it online, and we've done it online before like recently, actually really recently, and it worked almost exactly the same. So at the workshop, whether that's online or offline, you will get onto the step 4 of co-design, which is sensitizing. The key to sensitizing step is letting your people and participants to be altered with your context, and they feel relaxed, and most importantly, you need to create a comfortable atmosphere that makes your participants to feel free to talk about themselves. This step is crucial, as if you fail to sensitize the participants into the right context with the right atmosphere, they will struggle to generate new ideas, which will be a focus of the next step, facilitating, which is my favorite part. So next slide, please. So the facilitating step differentiates co-design from focus group. And that's why I really like about it, because if you're familiar with the focus group, you may already know it emphasis on consumer insight gathering. So, but most often time, you might only hear the loudest person in the seminar or in the workshop. So there's only a telling. There's no any enacting or making together. This step of co-design not only allows you to test the concept through discussion with your participants, but also results in co-creating new solutions through telling, enacting, and building. You need an expert for this step. Particularly, it took me a while to actually learn how to do it well and get the poke the right questions so that we can get the useful information for building a behavior change program. Because if you don't work with the expert who have numerous experience of managing team dynamic, asking relevant questions at the right time, you can't really eventually allow your participants to empower their creativity to co-design new values for new program. A true synergy comes from you putting yourself as a facilitator, not a researcher or practitioner with a gown on. You actually become like a teammate or teamwork with the participants. And in this phase, you will run activities that allow you to reflect, write, and discuss, which we call telling here, or enact new ideas by letting participants to build their own solutions and making new ideas from existing ideas. So I've often used a new campaign board that has 4 pillars to touch on that all of the participants need to go through all of those four, which are 4 Ps in marketing. So product type or service type. They also need to identify the price range that they are willing to pay for the product that they've suggested. And then they also need to think about the promotion side of it. How would they want to hear about it? Also, where would they want to get it? So where would they want to purchase the product or the service? So the new campaign design board is often used in this facilitating step of co-design to fully engage the consumers in creating the behavior change program that has all components, all 4P components in it. The next slide, please. So this step of reflecting involves data synthesis and analysis. Throughout the sensitizing and facilitating step, which normally covers in the covered in the workshop, you'll actually get a this transcription ready. So because you're going to record all the session. So the consumer values are identified through reflecting on activities that you've ran in the previous steps. And as an outcome of this step, you will gain new learnings and consumer insight. Obviously, you need more than 2 researchers analyzing the data independently in this phase of co-design to gain scientific rigor in identifying consumer insights. One of the key lessons that I learned through my own food waste co-design session was that nobody wanted us to do door knocking, which found to be most effective at that time in 2017 to engage more people to the food waste reduction behavior. But in Australia, everyone's so yeah really hates the door knocking, and also they told me that they want us to do something about leftovers, because there's so much leftovers, like half-eaten sandwiches or half-eaten apples if you have kids in your house, or like, you know, if you're living by yourself, you know, you want to save money, so you buy bulk and there's a leftover or just soon to be rotten vegetables and fruits in your, you know, sitting in your fridge and you don't know what to do about it. And also they wanted us to do something that can save people money. Yeah, because we all want to save money. I think we can easily relate to that. And finally, they wanted us to do community event style program, not just one-on-one kind of you know, education kind of a looking information based program. So all of these insights were gathered through a reflecting stage of co-design. And then we've built a program based on this learning. So these new insights then become a core concept of new program that you will build in the final step of co-design. So let's move on to the final stage, Timo, thank you. So before I actually go into the Waste Not Want Not campaign, to give you a better understanding of how you truly bring the core concept that you learn through reflecting stage to the program, I want to just say out loud here, building for change is complex. I think everyone understands that it's complicated. The solutions that you want to you know, create to solve the problem that is any social problem, it's complicated, it's multifaceted, and we all know that. But what you have at the end of co-design session is new ideas, learnings that are up to date. I think that's most important thing and most fascinating thing about co-design, because you've just spoken with your market, so you know what they exactly want us to do, and what are the things that are right for them and that are so up to date. If you're getting these kind of new learnings or new ideas through your readings, like journal articles, those journal articles takes about two years, up to 2 years to get published. So the data is already old. People are changing. We shift like you know, regularly, almost irregularly. You know, we change our minds every minute sometimes. You know, so it's hard to capture that, but co-design allows you to do that. So not all insight, but we also understand not all insights can be transformed into a field. We understand the limitation in resources and budget that every project leader needs to, you know, just get their heads on and then like not cry, but you know, we all need to also consider the feasibility of the ideas that the consumers told us to implement to the field. But the key here is that we keep our attitude humble, open to new customer or consumer insight, and we do our best to make it happen. So feasibility of ideas is examined in this last step, and it requires getting onto the field and pilot testing the insight. So some of the other insights that I got it through the reflecting in terms of the product or service feature, actually 1/3 of the participants wanted us to use smartphone app to track their food wastage at home on a weekly basis. But because of the limitation of the resources and budget that we had, we couldn't actually do that. But we wanted to focus on the core concept, which was people letting us, people telling us that they want us to do something about leftovers. So we took that core concept and we created 16 new leftover reuse recipe cards by partnering with 3 Brisbane chefs. And we've also generated promotion materials, which were a logo printed chopping board and shopping list notepad that can be magnetic to the your fridge, and then the shopping bag. At that time, Ulis and Coles were still using plastic bags, so one of the merchant that we created was the shopping bag. And we ran it 2 weeks of community events, because that was what our people said they wanted us to do. So we've installed a kitchen in middle of Stockland Cleveland Shopping Centre for 2 weeks, and then we did daily demonstration of recipes every day. So once you come into the your regular shopping centre, you start to smell food. There's your favorite chef, Brisbane renowned chef Dominic Rizzo, in middle of the shopping centre creating food, and you've tasted it because it's a free sample, and you get it and you eat it and you go like, oh, this is really yummy. And you get the recipe cards that you can actually follow. But the funny thing about the recipe cards, it's all is that because the funny thing about the recipe cards is that you can actually easily follow by just using the ingredients that are in your fridge, because all of the ingredients that are used to create the leftover reuse recipe cards were actually based on the top 10 most commonly wasted and available items in households in Australia. So you don't have to shop more to follow recipes. So that's what we did with the Waste Not Want Not campaign, by using co-design results and ideas and new learnings. It was fascinating. The other programs that I want to share with you, the next slide, please.
Hey, Jaewon, there's just one question I think you can answer really briefly. How many people did you have in your co-design sessions, and how many sessions did you run?
Yep. So I've ran, because I've ran twice in my PhD. I had normally 10 to 15 participants per co-design, and I've ran 5. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And as a general answer, because we have done a number of these, the numbers can really vary, but we've never turned anyone down. And most our experience is obviously back to face. Online things change a little bit, but you still don't want to convolute them, because there's certain elements that we do, like when they design new campaigns, like Jaewon was explaining, we always get them to pitch these ideas back to us. So if you have 25 groups, that would get terribly boring after a while. So you have to limit the amount of people for these sessions, and probably the recommendation is to not go beyond 20. Unless you're really well organized.
Same, Timo. If you have more than 20 people in the room, because for the facilitating step, you'll actually break down people into groups, small groups, 3 to 4 people, so they can actually have a group dynamic. So we can control the group dynamic as well. So and if you have over 15, close to getting to 20, you need another facilitator who can actually back you up. So you can't just run it by yourself. So the manageable amount of number will be 10 to 15. But our recent science tells us that 20 people in total, regardless of the number of the co-design session, is enough to actually gain enough information to create a pilot test, or to test the concept.
There's a few more questions that are coming through, and I noted down some earlier ones, so we'll try to keep up with all of those if we're not getting to them in the Q&A, which is shortly after Jaewon's final slide that she wants to chat about. So I'm going to let Jaewon do that, and then we'll jump straight into the Q&A, and Jaewon can come to rescue me as well in the chat to help with all of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So not only Waste Not What Not campaign, but these are the list of some programs and campaigns that we've developed and delivered by following co-design steps. And guess what? Not surprisingly, all have been successful in changing perception, either or behavior to solve the problem that each project aimed for. One key lesson that I learned through applying co-design is that it is a method and a tool, and that allows you to truly listen to consumer. Thus create something with them, not just for them. That was the end of my, yep.
And that's a nice way to finish, Jaewon. I think
Thank
a
you.
powerful statement to make. And I think you're also highlighting the importance of bringing diverse stakeholder opinions, though, into the mix of the final, program that you're building as well. Because Waste Not One Not is not just created with the end user. There's a lot more to it, and co-design helps to facilitate that. I think after this, we've actually have the slide for a Q&A session. So as the questions are sort of coming at us, we'll go one at a time here. And one question came just from Artie, who was asking, do these co-design sessions have homogeneous participants, or do you encourage diversity?
It really depends on the context, to be honest. For the food waste project, because our target audience was young generation, who are younger, less older than 30, and live by themselves, have no access to garden. But there was also another factor that we looked into, which was their level of confidence in cooking. So using that factor, we've actually segmented people into the different groups. So we've gathered the people who feel more comfortable and more confident in cooking into another group, into one group, and then we've grouped the other people who feel like they're less feeling less confident to cook, but in the same session, but grouped it differently, and we gave them the idea board to work on it. So half, yes, we encourage diversity, but from my experience, it's better if the diversity is encouraged within the target audience that you have, because every individual is different.
Yeah, I think that's the important point, right? Like it will differ from project to project, and who essentially the persona is that you're trying to serve. And the more specifically you know that, probably the better it is. But we have also done co-design sessions at earlier points in time where the target persona perhaps was not as thoroughly mapped out yet. So there's not the exact answer we can provide here, because at some points in time it's just a bit more broad, where you then have a natural inclination for diversity, whereas at other times we know, well, this is exactly who we're going after, so there's no point in going much more broad. And I think there's also, there's a few questions coming through. I'm happy to take this one, Jaewon, with regards to younger people, what would need to be considered. For us in the research center, I can just say from our experience, obviously when we're working with younger audiences, the ethical clearance procedures that we have to surpass are a bit more challenging and difficult. We obviously have to be quite mindful also when we're talking about things like alcohol and drugs, to not upset children or adolescents in the process, to making sure that we really ensure a session that empowers and not in some way upsets the individuals that are participating. But I think Jaewon made this really clear that we see this as a way to actually put people at the front and center that usually don't really get a lot of voice, and we sometimes have to really encourage them to speak up, because they're not used to being encouraged to speak, because they're not used to that. Depending on their sort of upbringing and socio-demographic background, and perhaps also if it's something really personal and challenging, we have to manage that very carefully. And that's why Jaewon also said that sometimes it's really good to have facilitators come in and navigate that process for you and make sure that that process is executed properly.
And I think it's important. Sorry, can I jump in?
Go for it.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's important. That's why the resourcing step is so important, because through the resourcing step, by going back to the previous programs and getting lessons from them, you actually know who you really need to speak to. Obviously, with my food waste project, I had to narrow it down to younger generation because they tend to waste more. Found to be not maybe necessarily anymore right now, but at that time of the time. So it really depends on what you learn through that resourcing step. I know from my experience of talking to actually engaging with people in Waste Not Want Not campaign duration in the shopping center. If I speak to senior or elder people, they will go like, I survived through worse, so you know, I don't waste, or my house is fully already sustainable, which means that they're not our target ones because they're already doing the great job. We need to actually speak to the people who needs change. So that's why we focus on the younger people. Would that answer Lee's comment and Lynette?
Well, as they type back, I'll take another one. So Sarah was just asking for the difference between co-creation and co-design, and at the start of the session, I tried to contextualize it a bit. So when we talk about co-creation, is essentially an umbrella term for a deep learning phase that we do, and co-design would be a specific method that we apply in order to speak to the end users, but also to wider stakeholder groups. So that's how the terminology is different, or how we use it in our center. There's some questions coming through regarding resources to run some of these activities, the facilitation bits and pieces of co-design, and also some examples for what was it? Yeah, how behavioral insights and science approaches could be integrated in here. I think for both questions, the answer is you can bring anything you want into the co-design session, and that resourcing stage is really, we get thrown into a lot of deep ends where, we're not contextual experts and we don't want to be. Social marketing and the approach, co-creation and building for change and essentially engaging with those audiences that we want to serve is a process that we apply to a number of different challenges and societal issues. So we're happy to not be the contextual expert, because that resourcing stage really allows us to look at what does the evidence base say in the published or even in the gray literature. We pull the insights and the learnings out from there. And we sometimes have expert conversations as well on top of that to understand best practices, to understand what the risk factors are and what the solutions might be. And then we want to kind of work on activity cards, we call them, that present some of these existing solutions that have worked in the past and bring them to the participants. And that's what J1 was talking about, and what they did here in the context of the food waste project, to sort of say, well, here's 20 things or 15 things or 10 things that we have found before, and probably it should be less. I think 10 is a good number, to put in front of these participants and get them to rate these activities, the things they like, the things they don't like, so that you can really get an understanding of what participants' preferences are. And then there's a rigorous process that we use when we obviously analyze all this data to start to provide us with some preference rankings and things like that, in order to understand what to move forward with and what to perhaps discard.
And that's why the final step of co-design, the key to that step is feasibility. So examining the feasibility and knowing your resources, knowing your budget. Obviously, you will do your best to actually enable those key consumer insights to be up and running in the field. But we understand the constraints that every project has. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Comes down to the reality.
Yeah, that's very true. There's some positive comments coming through. Somebody's even speaking German here to me. Fantastic.
Yeah, I know. Wow.
I won't
Where's Korean?
I won't do more German now in this webinar, because the rest will be disadvantaged. But earlier questions were, and I noted them down, were how, because when you talked about the screening process,
Mm-hmm.
J1, I think Samira was asking, how do you communicate to those that you then have selected? And Samira, you're welcome to elaborate a bit more on what exactly you're trying to find out there, as J1 prepares her answer. But I mean, 1 or 2 cents that I would like to share here is that depending on the audience, you really want to be as tailored as possible, and you want to think about how to engage in the lead up to the co-design session. Now, for us, really, since the pandemic has hit us, I mean, co-design currently is happening online only, and it's been actually extremely successful and highly effective for the ones that I can personally speak about, having conducted those. We've been even able to give people a little bit of homework prior to coming to the co-design session, which back in the face-to-face days, we never did. Those are my first 2 cents here, J1, and you're more than welcome to elaborate a bit further.
So Samir just sent us the chat saying that, so when you're recruiting participants, how do you communicate to those people who are not going to be invited to the co-design sessions? So when I put up the registration link on Facebook ads, so that I can let people register, and then I can then later on screen them, I've communicated in a way that use a bit of commercial marketer head there. Come and tell us about your opinion around food waste for less than an hour, and as a gift, to thank your time, you'll get a $50 voucher. So but the spaces are limited, so we use the that kind of wording to actually let people know that the registration doesn't mean you will always win the chance to actually put yourself in a workshop. Does that make sense? Yeah. So because we also know that the retention rate, so even if I go through the screening, so we had 200 registered and we narrowed it down to 70, so we can actually get our target audience on board. But on the actual day, there's no shows, obviously. maybe that won't happen with the online only version, but that happened with the face-to-face version. So I always over recruited, always over prepared the incentives. Yep. And then yeah, that's what I did. Is that answers your question?
Yeah, I think these are, I mean, I think they're good answers, J1. In addition to that, I would say, when every co-design session is really different and unique. I just want to say that as well. And somebody's asking here, how do you do with farmers that are resistant to change? Actually, I'm involved in a project down south where we're engaging with primary producers, so farmers and fishers. And obviously it depends also on the existing network you can tap into. So often we might not have the direct context, the direct context, but there are stakeholder groups, perhaps your funder or a research partner or collaborator that is extremely well connected. And it's then leveraging those connections to also bring the right people to the co-design sessions. And I think that is incredibly important. I mean, we've done work with schools where, it's notoriously hard to get into. And the reason why it's worked is because, we have built a network, or we have partners for the project that can help bring those right people in. So that's what you really need to develop to make that recruitment a success. And I personally think, the more incentive you can give, I mean, in this day and age, to get somebody into a session is probably helpful. I know that all market research agencies, when you commission them to do work, they're paying their participants greatly. And it's sort of an expected thing that almost comes with it. I think it's very rare for co-design sessions to get away with a little pay when you're asking people to really work hard as well. I think they deserve to be paid for that, because it's not just, share a few of your opinions like in a focus group. It's going way beyond that, and we should reward that.
There are questions about ethical dilemma, and Liv also mentioned that could we just say up like front, we're looking for people who fit X, Y, and Z criteria. Yes, we can. But the reason that I didn't put that upfront when I was like putting the ads up there for the registration was that didn't want to just limit because I wasn't sure how many I would get. So there was a bit of flexibility there. But as soon as people got the confirmation email, they had the link to the online ethical form, the consent form that they had to read. And in the information and consent form, which got the ethical clearance from our university, had the full information of what is expected in the workshop and your role as a participant and things like that. So there has been bit drops because people, after reading the online information consent form, they didn't want to consent on that, which is their free will. There's nothing we can do about it. So that's why we always over recruit, maybe like 20% of the total participants you want to get. We always have that on top of the total amount, so that we can get the right people in the right amount that is enough, telling us their ideas and creating
and look, I mean,
together.
again, it also depends, J1, right? Like, I mean, during the PhD project at that point in time, where the project is different to when you're coming in and you have a really specific audience and you know exactly where to find them and you can pull them in, then you probably don't even need to over recruit. I mean, the session we ran last week, we had 100% attendance. Yeah, but that doesn't happen in every single project either, and sometimes you have tough to reach audiences. Look, I mean, I know there's a lot of questions still coming at our way, and we're obviously more than happy to engage with anyone also following this webinar. I personally am the reason, though, why we will have to kind of come to an end at this point in time, because I have a follow-up workshop that I need to run exactly at 1 o'clock. But what we wanted to sort of give you guys, because we know there's a lot of people that are here and might have not gotten the answer to their question, both J1 and I are more than happy to do a free sort of consultation session with us. Please simply get in touch with us. I mean, our details are available, or message straight to our social marketing at griffith.edu.au email address to get in touch and book one of these sessions. And we're happy to talk about your respective challenges and see how we can be of assistance. And I think from there, I would pass back to Morgan to close off this session. And so far, I can only say thank you very much for all of you showing up. Great attendance today, and have a lovely rest of your Friday. Back to you, Morgan.
Wonderful. Thanks, Timo. Thanks, J1. So thank you, everyone, for attending our webinar today. As I mentioned earlier, you will all be receiving an email from me later today, which will include a link to this video recording, as well as the PowerPoint presentation slides. It will also include a link to our evaluation form. So if you could spare 2 to 3 minutes, the survey shouldn't take any longer than that. We'd really appreciate your feedback. We do use it to improve our future events. For those of you who are interested in attending more of our events, please keep an eye on our website, on our events calendar. I'm just posting the link in the chat box now. We will be adding more events to our calendar over the next few weeks, including our Change Conference, which is moving online for this year. So please keep an eye in this space. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.